Grayson looked at me over his bourbon, totally relaxed, and said, "My ex Jade is coming to Christmas. Try not to make it awkward this year." He said it like he was giving me a tiny chore, something a good wife should handle. I just smiled, nodded, and played the quiet, agreeable woman he thought I was. He had no idea that I had already set my own plan in motion. And when the doorbell rang on Christmas night, the world he built on lies would collapse right in front of him. He talked about Jade like she was some sad, forgotten soul who needed company during the holidays. He didn't even bother to hide the softness in his voice. It should have crushed me. A year ago it would have. But now, I just watched him, memorizing the arrogance in his smirk. He really believed I was too fragile, too dependent, too simple to ever push back. But a week earlier, I had seen the truth. I couldn't sleep, and when I rolled over, I saw his phone glowing. Unlocked, almost begging me to pick it up. And I did. I still hear the sound my heart made when it cracked in half reading those texts. Months of flirting, planning, dirty messages, and worst of all, their strategy to make me file for divorce so Grayson could use our prenup to leave me with nothing. He called me manageable. He told Jade I didn't ask questions. He described me like I was a quiet pet he kept around the house. I cried until sunrise. But somewhere between the tears and the shaking hands, something inside me hardened. I searched for the prenup he made me sign years ago. And when I found it, I found something else, the adultery clause. One that would flip the entire agreement in my favor. All I needed was proof. So I hired Rosa Vega, a private investigator who didn't waste words and didn't waste time. She looked at me once and said, "We'll get him." And I believed her. Now, with Grayson asleep beside me, peaceful and clueless, I stared at the Christmas stockings hanging on the mantel. Our initials stitched in gold. A picture of a marriage he thought he controlled. I whispered to myself, "This Christmas, it's my turn." I met Rosa Vega the next morning in a small cafe far from my neighborhood. She looked me straight in the eye as I told her everything, and unlike everyone else in my life, she didn't doubt a single word. She spoke with a calm, firm voice as we planned our next steps. She explained how she would follow Grayson's routine, check his credit card activity, track his movements, and collect anything that could show what he was really doing. Hearing her talk made me feel grounded again, like I finally had someone on my side who understood exactly what needed to be done. When I got home, I slipped right back into the role Grayson expected, quiet, cooperative, and harmless. He asked me to come Christmas shopping with him, and I smiled like nothing was wrong. Walking next to him, pretending to care about his choices, felt like holding my breath underwater. When he picked up a silk scarf for someone special and asked my opinion, I told him it was perfect, even though the thought of him gifting it to Jade made my stomach twist. I kept my face smooth, my tone soft, because I needed him to believe everything was normal. Later that day, Rosa sent me the first evidence. My hands shook as I opened the photos. Grayson and Jade sitting close at a hotel bar, leaning toward each other like they shared a world that didn't include me. The dates and times matched perfectly with the lunches he claimed were for work. Seeing him out there, comfortable, relaxed, laughing, felt like a fresh punch to the chest. But I didn't crumble. The shock faded into a cold clarity. I finally had something real, something solid to hold on to. A day later, Rosa called again, her voice sharper this time. She told me Jade wasn't just seeing Grayson. She was also secretly involved with Arthur Thorne, Grayson's powerful married boss. Hearing that stopped me in my tracks. Jade wasn't just sneaking around. She was using both men to get ahead at the firm. The betrayal wasn't a simple triangle. It was a whole web of manipulation wrapped around people who had no idea they were being played. As I listened, something inside me shifted. This wasn't just my fight anymore. This wasn't only about my marriage or the lies Grayson told. This was about exposing someone who thought she could control everyone around her and walk away untouched. I realized I didn't need to confront either of them right now. I didn't need to shout or cry or demand answers. I just needed patience. That night, I sat in the quiet living room, the glow of the tree lights reflecting off the windows. I felt strangely steady. I had the truth, I had Rosa, and now I had a plan forming in my mind. If Grayson wanted Jade at our Christmas dinner, then Jade would show up thinking she was winning. But by the time Christmas ended, every secret she'd buried would be dragged into the light, and she would finally understand who she underestimated. I spent the next few days sorting through every piece of information Rosa found. Together, we organized everything into a clear, undeniable file: messages, photos, hotel charges, and timelines. Looking at it all in one place made everything feel heavier, but also sharper. There was no way anyone could twist these facts. It proved not only Grayson's betrayal, but Jade's habit of juggling two lives at once. I felt a strange calm as I saved each document. This wasn't just evidence anymore. It was protection. Once everything was in order, I created a new email using a name no one could link back to me. I sat at my desk for a long moment, wondering if Arthur Thorne had any idea what Jade was doing behind his back. I doubted it. Men like him usually believed they were the ones in control. I wrote the message carefully, sticking to facts and leaving emotion out of it. I told him that the woman he trusted, and more than likely thought he owned, was also involved with one of his own employees. I hit send before I could overthink it. His response came faster than I expected. He brushed it off at first, saying someone must be jealous or trying to stir trouble. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I attached two photos. One of Jade and Grayson sitting close together, the other of them entering the hotel on a night Arthur was supposedly with her. I sent those without a single word. He replied again, this time more direct, asking who I was and how I got the pictures. I hesitated, then typed out the truth. I told him I was Grayson's wife. I explained that I wasn't looking for pity. I only wanted him to know what Jade was doing with both of them. I told him they planned to humiliate me and walk away clean, and that Jade was using each of them to secure her own rise at the firm. I didn't threaten him or ask for anything. I simply let the truth speak for itself. There was a long gap after that email. I almost thought he wouldn't respond. But late that evening, he finally wrote back. His tone was different now, cold, clipped, furious beneath the surface. He said he needed to confirm a few things and would contact me again soon. I didn't know what he would do, but I knew he wouldn't stay quiet. The next day, he sent a final message. He had checked everything. He knew I was telling the truth, and he wanted to be there when the truth came out. He said he would attend the Christmas dinner Grayson insisted on having, along with his wife, Eleanor. Reading that made my pulse jump. I never expected him to involve her, but in a strange way, it made sense. If Jade was willing to play with everyone's lives, then everyone deserved to know. I closed my laptop with a slow breath. Now Jade wouldn't just be facing me. She'd be walking into a room full of people she lied to, and none of them would be on her side. Grayson spent Christmas Eve in high spirits, humming to himself as he wrapped a small box with extra care. I knew exactly who the gift was for, but I didn't let a single sign of emotion slip. I simply sat on the couch, watching him tie the ribbon with a proud smile on his face, acting as if he was the perfect husband. Inside, I felt nothing but a sharp, steady focus. He had no idea that the night he was looking forward to would turn into something he'd never forget. On Christmas morning, I woke up early and moved around the kitchen with a calm rhythm. I prepared every dish with precision, setting the table with the china we reserved for special occasions. I wanted everything to look elegant, not because I cared about impressing Grayson or Jade, but because the moment needed to be flawless. Before getting dressed, I pulled out the red dress I had tucked away for years. Grayson always said it drew too much attention, but that was exactly the point. Today, I wanted to stand out, not for him, but for myself. Just before noon, my sister Chloe arrived. The second she stepped in, she sensed something unusual in my expression. I asked her to follow me to the hallway, away from Grayson's ears. When I explained that things might turn messy and asked her to keep her phone ready, she stared at me in disbelief. I didn't give her the full picture, but I told her enough for her to understand that something serious was coming. She squeezed my hand and promised to stay quiet and alert. Having her there eased the tightness in my chest. Not long after, the doorbell rang. Jade stepped in like she owned the entire room. She wore a dress designed to show off her confidence and a smile that barely hid her contempt. She took a slow look around the house and complimented it with a tone that felt more like an insult. I thanked her politely and stepped aside. She brushed past me and drifted straight toward Grayson, who lit up the moment she appeared. Watching them lean close to each other while whispering felt like someone turning a knife inside me, but my face stayed calm. As I walked to the dining room, I could feel Chloe's eyes observing everything. Grayson and Jade continued talking as if I wasn't even there. They shared jokes and stories about work, excluding me without hesitation. I simply set the food down and invited them to sit. Jade took her seat as if she were the hostess. Grayson didn't notice. He was too busy admiring her confidence. The first few minutes of dinner were coated in polite smiles. Jade made small comments here and there about how busy their office life was, always hinting at things she and Grayson shared that I supposedly couldn't relate to. Her tone was sweet, but each remark carried a sting. Grayson encouraged her, adding his own casual remarks that made it clear they saw themselves on one side and me on another. I kept my expression soft. I nodded at everything. I ate slowly. I let them believe I was unbothered. Under the table, my fingers tapped lightly with the rhythm of the clock on the wall. Every tick brought me closer to the moment I had been preparing for. Everything in that room looked peaceful. Warm lights, gentle music, the smell of cinnamon and roasted food. But beneath that calm surface, a storm was gathering quietly, and none of them could see it coming. I sat there at the table pretending everything was normal, even though every word from Jade felt like a needle. She kept smiling that fake polite smile while she compared her power career to my life at home, acting like raising our child and running our house was some kind of joke. Grayson didn't stop her. He actually laughed with her, throwing in his own little comments about how I wouldn't get the pressure they dealt with every day. I kept my face calm, but inside something cold settled in. It wasn't just Jade's attitude. It was the way Grayson let her talk about me like I wasn't good enough. Like I wasn't even in the same world as them. But I knew something they didn't. I wasn't the one about to lose my footing. They were. When the timer on my phone buzzed quietly in my pocket, my pulse jumped. This was it. I pushed my chair back and forced a small smile. "I'll grab something from the kitchen," I said, keeping my voice steady. I walked away slowly, even though my heart felt like it was racing ahead of me. The second I stepped into the kitchen, I exhaled and pulled out my phone. My fingers were shaking, but I typed the message clearly, "Now." I hit send. For a moment, everything was silent. I stood there gripping the counter, waiting, almost afraid the plan wouldn't go through. But then, ding-dong. The sound echoed through the house. Grayson's voice floated in from the dining room. "Who's coming here this late?" He sounded irritated, confused, completely unaware that this was the moment everything shifted. I walked back slowly, letting the tension build in the room. Jade's smile had faded, and Grayson's brow was pulled tight as he stared toward the hallway. "Expecting someone?" he asked me. I met his eyes and felt something sharp rise in my chest. Not anger, not fear, but a quiet confidence I hadn't felt in years. "I did send an invitation," I said, keeping my tone soft but firm. "Just not to who you think." I moved past them and reached for the door. My hand didn't shake this time. I pulled it open wide. Standing there were Arthur and Eleanor Thorne, Grayson's biggest investors. The people whose approval he worshipped. The couple he always bragged about impressing. They stepped inside, elegant and composed, but their eyes were already searching the room, taking in the scene. Behind me, I didn't have to turn to know what was happening. I felt the shift in the air, the sudden silence, the shock, the fear. Jade didn't laugh this time. Grayson didn't have a comeback. Neither of them expected my guests. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the power tilt toward me. The moment they stepped inside, the room felt like it stopped breathing. Grayson opened and closed his mouth like he didn't know how to make a single word work. His voice finally came out thin and strained. "Mr. Thorne? I don't understand. Why are you here?" Arthur didn't answer him. He just looked at me, giving a small, steady nod. That alone told Grayson this wasn't a surprise visit. I walked to the center of the room. For once, I wasn't shaking or shrinking back. I felt strangely steady, like everything inside me had clicked into place. I turned to them, Grayson, Jade, and the Thorns, and said quietly, "Since we're all here, let's just be honest tonight." Jade's eyes twitched, and Grayson looked like he wanted to disappear. I continued, keeping my tone calm. "I know about the affair. I know how long it's been going on. I know about the hotel trips, the lies, and the things you said about me." I paused, letting that sink in. "And I know about the plan to leave me once your new deal was safe." Grayson's face drained. Jade's lips parted, ready to throw something sharp. "You're twisting everything," Jade snapped, forcing a laugh that sounded brittle. "You're acting like some jealous wife making up stories." I didn't react. I picked up my tablet, connected it to the TV, and tapped the screen. The first image filled the room, Jade and Grayson in a hotel lobby, holding hands, trying to look hidden. Jade sucked in a breath. Grayson whispered, "Sienna, stop." But I kept going. Text messages popped up next. The ones where they mocked me, talked about dates, complained when I asked simple questions at home. Receipts followed. Location logs. Photos. All neatly organized by Rosa, who had seen everything before I did. Jade stepped forward, shaking now. This doesn't prove anything. You're blowing things. She didn't finish because Arthur finally spoke. His voice cut through the room like a blade. It proves enough. Everyone turned toward him. Even I felt the shift. Arthur took a slow step closer, his expression unreadable but cold. Jade, you might want to stop pretending. Grayson blinked fast, confused. Jade froze. Arthur continued. Sienna isn't the only one you lied to. You forgot to tell Grayson about your little arrangement with me. Eleanor folded her arms, watching Jade with something between anger and disgust. I stood silently as Arthur revealed details I hadn't even expected. Messages, private meetings, offers Jade had made to him behind Grayson's back. She had been trying to secure a future with whichever man would benefit her the most. Jade's voice cracked. Arthur, you said. I didn't promise you anything, he said sharply. And I certainly didn't agree to be part of this mess. Her face crumbled. Grayson stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. For once, the two of them weren't united. As their lies collided in the open, the room finally began to shift, and none of them could hide anymore. Jade's face twisted the moment she realized she couldn't talk her way out anymore. The calm, polished version of her broke in an instant. She pointed at Grayson first, her voice sharp and shaking. You're nothing. You were just a stepping stone. I only stayed with you because you were easy to control. Grayson flinched. He looked like her words punched the air out of him. But Jade wasn't done. She turned on Arthur next, her anger so loud it felt like it filled the whole room. And you, don't pretend you didn't know what you were doing. You were just another tool. Both of you acted like kings, but I used you both the same. Her mask shattered completely. Every greedy intention she ever hid was right there, spilling out in front of the people she had been playing. Grayson stared at her as if he couldn't believe he had ever defended her. His face went pale, his jaw loose, like someone had taken the ground out from under him. I could almost see the moment he realized the truth. He wasn't the clever, desired man he imagined he was. He was just one of her pieces, and she had moved him around with ease. And the quiet wife he thought he could toss aside? I was the one who ended up exposing all of this. He knew it now. He felt it. He looked at me with something close to panic, like he didn't know who I was anymore. Eleanor Thorne, who hadn't spoken once during all the chaos, finally lifted her head. Her expression didn't rise or fall. It stayed calm, almost graceful, but every word she spoke landed like stone. Jade, she said softly, your time at the firm is over. Jade blinked hard, like she didn't understand the sentence at first. Eleanor continued, still calm. And I will make sure no other firm in this city hires you. What you've done goes beyond betrayal. It shows who you truly are. Then Eleanor turned to Arthur. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She just looked at him with the kind of disappointment that hurts more than anger. Arthur lowered his head, completely silent. I stepped forward next, pulling a folder from under the table. I set it down in front of Grayson. He opened it slowly, and when he saw what it was, his face fell even further. Divorce papers. I kept my tone steady. Since your affair is proven, the prenup doesn't stand anymore. I watched his eyes widen. I'm taking what I'm owed, Grayson. Every part of it. He pushed back from the table like he couldn't breathe. Sienna, please, we can talk. No, I said simply. There's nothing left to talk about. Jade grabbed her coat without another word and ran out, almost tripping on her way to the elevator. Arthur and Eleanor followed soon after, leaving the apartment heavy with quiet tension. When the door shut behind them, Grayson stood alone in the wreckage of everything he thought he controlled. And I walked past him without even looking back. When Grayson finally walked out with a small suitcase in his hand, the apartment felt strangely quiet. I held myself together until the elevator doors closed. The moment I heard them slide shut, everything inside me cracked. The rush that had kept me steady all night disappeared, and the weight of what my life had become hit me hard. I sank onto the couch and let the tears fall. I wasn't crying for him. I was crying for the years I wasted believing in something that had never been real. Chloe sat beside me without saying a word. She didn't ask questions, didn't push me to talk. She just wrapped her arm around my shoulders and let me cry until my breathing finally slowed. When I felt steady enough to speak, she reminded me that this moment wasn't the end. It was the start of something I had never allowed myself to imagine, freedom. The next morning, I met with my lawyer and handed over everything Rosa had collected. With Arthur and Eleanor ready to support my claims, the case moved faster than I expected. Grayson didn't fight. There was nothing left for him to hold on to. His job was shaky, his image damaged, and he didn't want the details of his affair made public. He signed whatever the lawyer put in front of him, barely looking at the pages. Watching him in that meeting was surreal. This man who once held so much power over me now sat hunched in silence, avoiding my eyes. The settlement came quickly. I kept the apartment, the savings, and a share of the investments he once bragged about. He walked away with far less than he ever imagined. Jade disappeared from the firm within a week. No goodbye party, no farewell speech, just a quiet exit and a rumor that she was moving somewhere far away to start fresh. Everyone knew what that really meant. Arthur tried to repair things with Eleanor, but the truth had left too deep a mark. Eleanor didn't raise her voice or create a scene. She simply gathered her documents, hired the best lawyer in town, and used every piece of proof to secure a future where she no longer had to depend on her husband. Watching her choose herself made me feel less alone. She had her own storm to walk through, and she faced it with calm strength. Once all the papers were signed and the dust finally settled, I stood inside the apartment that was now fully mine. The silence felt different this time, not heavy but strange. I walked from room to room, trying to feel victorious, trying to feel proud of everything I had survived. But all I found was a soft, dull ache. Revenge had given me justice, but it didn't fix the empty places inside me. It didn't erase the years I spent trying to make a broken marriage look whole. Winning didn't erase losing. I opened the windows, letting the cold air fill the space. I didn't feel strong yet, but I felt lighter. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like my life finally belonged to me. After the dust settled, I finally allowed myself to think about what came next. The apartment still held traces of Grayson's cold, minimalist taste. Everything sharp, muted, and orderly. It reminded me too much of the life I had been trapped in. I started moving things around, painting walls, bringing in colors I had always loved but never allowed myself to enjoy. Each piece of furniture, every picture frame, every cushion I added felt like reclaiming a small piece of myself. The space slowly began to feel alive, vibrant, and distinctly mine. Walking through it, I could finally breathe without the weight of his presence hanging over me. While redecorating, I felt an old spark return, a passion I had set aside for years. Interior design had once been my world, a place where creativity gave me freedom. I dusted off my notes, reviewed old sketches, and began planning each corner of the apartment with a renewed sense of purpose. Soon, I started a blog documenting every change, every idea, and every step of rebuilding not just my home, but myself. Writing it down made me see how far I had come and reminded me that I had control over my life again. One afternoon, as I was photographing a new arrangement in the living room, my phone rang. The name on the screen was unfamiliar, but the voice was urgent, almost desperate. A woman explained that she had heard about what happened at my Christmas dinner and felt trapped in a situation similar to mine. Belittled by her partner, constantly controlled, and suspicious of an affair. She didn't know where else to turn and needed guidance. I listened carefully, nodding even though she couldn't see me, feeling a strange connection in her fear and frustration. I promised to help her however I could. I put her in touch with Rosa, the private investigator who had been so crucial in my own journey. I also recommended a lawyer I trusted, someone who could guide her safely through the legal steps. The gratitude in her voice stirred something in me, a realization that my pain wasn't just something to survive, it could be a tool to empower others. Helping her made me see that my story could have purpose beyond my own recovery. I began reaching out to other women I knew, sharing advice, resources, and practical steps to regain their independence. Each time I offered guidance, I felt my confidence deepen and a sense of meaning return. My own experiences, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the careful planning of justice, became a map for others navigating similar storms. Bit by bit, my life became less about what I lost and more about what I was creating. I was no longer defined by Grayson's lies or Jade's schemes. My home, my passion, and the connections I built through helping others transformed my world. The person I had been trapped inside of was gone, replaced by someone stronger, more aware, and fully in control of her own life. For the first time in years, I felt grounded, alive, and purposeful. Every corner of my home, every blog post, and every person I helped reminded me that rebuilding wasn't just about walls and furniture. It was about claiming my life and shaping it on my terms. It was Christmas again, but this time everything felt different. My apartment was filled with warmth, laughter, and the smell of fresh pine from the tree I had decorated with care. Friends and my sister's family moved around the room, chatting and teasing each other, their voices blending into a cheerful hum. I watched them, a quiet smile on my face, feeling a lightness I hadn't known in years. The space felt alive, full of memories I was creating rather than memories I had endured. Over the past year, my blog had grown into something I hadn't imagined when I first started it. What began as a personal project to document my own journey of rebuilding became a full consultancy. I now worked with women across the country, helping them navigate toxic relationships, recover from betrayal, and make practical choices to regain control of their lives. Each success story, each grateful message, reminded me that my own suffering had not been wasted. It had turned into a source of strength for others. I walked through the apartment, pausing by the kitchen where Chloe was helping my niece hang ornaments. I touched the new shelves I had installed and the colorful cushions I had chosen. Every corner of this space reflected my choices, my tastes, and my freedom. The pain I had carried for so long was no longer an open wound. It was a scar, a quiet reminder of what I had endured and survived. I felt proud, not for revenge, not for the settlements, but for reclaiming myself. I paused near the window, watching the snowfall outside. A year ago, I would have spent this night anxious, uncertain, trapped in someone else's plans. Now, I was the one shaping my world, the one making the decisions. I had learned that power didn't come from control over others. It came from control over yourself. I had finally lived that lesson. And I thought back to the moment that had started it all, when Grayson told me his ex was coming to Christmas and to behave myself. I smiled, remembering the satisfaction of that night, the calm confidence I had carried as everything unfolded. I had behaved, but not as he expected. I had behaved like a woman who refused to be disrespected, who took control of her life, who became the hero of her own story. And it was the most fulfilling thing I had ever done. Looking around, I realized that Christmas had finally become mine. Not just a holiday, but a symbol of the life I had rebuilt, the independence I had earned, and the strength I had discovered. Do you think I handled everything the right way by standing up and taking control of my life? Or should I have tried to forgive them? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.